The conference room was packed that Tuesday morning. 25 years I'd worked at this company, and I'd never seen so many people crammed into one space. I stood at the front, laptop ready, prepared to present the latest update on my logistics platform. The system I'd spent the last 3 years perfecting. The one that could revolutionize how small businesses manage their supply chains. Tyler Grant, my manager, walked in last. He was 32, sharp suit, sharper ambition. He'd only been in his role for 6 months, but already he acted like he owned the place. Behind him came Victoria Lang, our new CEO. She was watching everything with cold, calculating eyes. I opened my mouth to begin the presentation. Tyler raised his hand. "Actually, Marianne, before you start, I need to address something with the team." His voice was smooth, almost apologetic. But I saw the glint in his eye. Something was wrong. "Your position is being restructured," he said, looking past me to Victoria. "Due to innovation fatigue." The room went silent. I stood there, laptop still open, presentation still on screen one. Innovation fatigue. The words echoed in my head like a bad joke. I'd been innovating before Tyler learned to write code. But nobody was laughing. My coworkers stared at their phones, at the floor, anywhere but at me. "This is nothing personal," Tyler continued, his voice louder now. "We're making room for fresh minds. Fresh perspectives." Victoria nodded from the back of the room. She was smiling. Actually smiling. I wanted to speak. To defend myself. To ask what any of this meant. But my throat felt tight, and the words wouldn't come. Security appeared at the door. 2 men I'd known for years. They wouldn't meet my eyes either. "Ms. Douglas, if you could come with us," one of them said softly. I gathered my laptop, my notes, the prototype drive sitting on the table. My hands were shaking. As I walked toward the door, I heard applause from the meeting room. They were clapping. Actually clapping for my dismissal. Tyler's voice carried through the hallway. "Let's make room for fresh minds." Fresh minds. I was 58. Apparently that was too old to matter. They gave me a cardboard box. "Standard procedure," they said. I filled it with photos, a coffee mug my daughter gave me, the small plant that had survived on my desk for 7 years. The prototype drive slipped from my grip and clattered on the floor. A young intern, barely 20, picked it up and handed it back to me. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I couldn't respond. If I spoke, I'd cry. And I refused to give them that. The walk through the office felt endless. People pretended to be busy, typing frantically at keyboards, staring at screens like their lives depended on it. Few gave me sympathetic looks. Most just looked relieved it wasn't them. Tyler stood by the elevator, phone in hand, laughing about something. He glanced up as I passed. "Nothing personal, Marianne," he said again. I didn't answer. I just walked into the elevator and watched the doors close on 25 years of my life. In my car, I sat in silence for 10 minutes. Then I looked at the box in my passenger seat and said it out loud. "They'll regret this. All of them." At home, I spread the layoff papers across my kitchen table. Every word felt like a knife. Terminated due to lack of scalability. That's what they'd written about my project. The project I'd given everything to. The system that worked. That could have changed everything. I poured a glass of wine and didn't touch it. I just stared at those papers until the words blurred. My phone buzzed with messages. Friends from work asking if I was okay. Saying they didn't see it coming. Offering to talk if I needed anything. I turned it off. That's when I saw it. An old notebook on my bookshelf, buried between manuals and design guides. I pulled it out and flipped through pages of hand-drawn code sketches, algorithm structures I designed years ago. Before Tyler. Before Victoria. Before any of them. These were my original designs. The foundation of everything. And then I remembered something. Something buried in my mind from a decade ago. Contract. A clause about intellectual property. I stood up, heart pounding, and headed to the attic. The attic was dusty and dark, filled with boxes I hadn't opened in years. I found the one labeled Work Documents 2010 to 2015 and tore it open. Files spilled out, contracts, performance reviews, old project proposals. Then I found it. A contract from 10 years ago, during the merger with Patterson Tech. I'd negotiated a special clause back then. Something about retaining independent patent credit for any derivative algorithms I created. The lawyer had assured me it was standard. Just a formality. I read it 3 times. Then I read it again. The clause was still valid. The company had never voided it. They'd probably forgotten it existed. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone. I needed to confirm this. I needed to know for sure. I called Marcus Webb, a former colleague who'd moved to legal consulting. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Mary Ann, I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. Marcus, I need you to look at something." I sent him photos of the contract. He went silent as he read. "Mary Ann," he said finally. "Do you know what this means? Tell me. You own it. You own the intellectual property." Marcus explained it carefully. The clause was airtight. Any derivative work based on my original algorithms belonged to me, not the company. But there was a catch. I had to re-register the product before they did. And I had to do it fast. "How fast?" "Yes. Tyler's team just filed preliminary patents last week. If they get approval before you register your claim, this gets complicated." I thanked Marcus and hung up. My mind was racing. I couldn't just refile the same product. That would trigger legal battles I couldn't afford. But I could adapt it, transform it, build something new from the foundation I'd created. Something they'd never see coming. I opened my laptop and started sketching. Not for corporations this time. Not for the Tylers and Victorias of the world. For small businesses. Independent retailers. The people who actually needed help and couldn't afford enterprise solutions. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Mary Ann Douglas." "Yes. It's Tom Alvarez. I don't know if you remember me, but we went to college together. I heard about what happened and I think we should talk." Tom Alvarez. I hadn't heard that name in 30 years. He'd been in my engineering program, quiet but brilliant. After graduation, he'd gone into venture capital while I'd gone into corporate development. We'd lost touch. "I remember you," I said. "What do you want to talk about? Can we meet tomorrow? I have a proposal." We met at a small coffee shop downtown. Tom looked older, gray hair, kind eyes. He ordered 2 coffees and got straight to the point. "I know what Tyler did to you. And I know about your platform." Tensed. "How do you know about that?" "I've been tracking your company for years. Your logistics system was the only interesting thing they had. When I heard they fired you, I dug deeper. Found the old patents, the merger clause. You own this, Mary Ann." "I'm rebuilding it," I said carefully. He smiled. "I know. And I want to fund it." "Why?" "Because Tyler Grant is an idiot. Because Victoria Lang is worse. And because I believe in you." I looked at him for a long moment. Then I shook his hand. "Marketing language. Isn't that infuriating?" Casey asked, watching over my shoulder. "No," I said. "It's perfect." "How is that perfect?" "Because when his system fails, and it will, everyone will know who to blame." 2 weeks later, supply chain chaos hit the country. A massive trucker strike disrupted deliveries nationwide. Businesses panicked. Tyler's system, the one he'd been bragging about, completely fell apart. Meanwhile, Lumalogics kept running. Our clients weathered the storm. Some even thanked us publicly. That's when journalists started asking questions. Who's behind North River Analytics? The leaked memo hit on a Wednesday morning. Someone inside Tyler's company, probably a disgruntled employee, posted an internal document comparing their system's failures to North River's success. It went viral in tech circles within hours. Tyler's phone must have been ringing off the hook. I imagined him in his office, scrambling to control the narrative. Investors were asking questions. Board members were demanding answers. Victoria called an emergency meeting. I knew, let's build something they'll never see coming. I turned my garage into a development lab. Tom's seed funding covered the basics. New equipment, software licenses, server time. I coded late into the night, surviving on coffee and determination. Every line of code felt like defiance. Every bug I fixed felt like revenge. The old platform had been designed for large corporations. This one would be different. Leaner. Faster. Built for the businesses nobody else cared about. I named it Lumalogics. Some nights I didn't sleep. I'd work until dawn, then shower and keep going. My daughter called worried. My friends texted checking in. I told them I was fine. I told them I was working on something. I didn't tell them I was building a weapon. One morning I made coffee and opened my laptop to check the news. A headline stopped me cold. Tyler Grant named Vice President of Product Innovation. There was a photo of him shaking hands with Victoria, both of them smiling. The article praised his bold leadership and fresh vision. Closed the laptop. Then I opened it again and kept coding. Let him celebrate. His time was coming. 3 months later, Lumalogics finally worked. I ran the first full test on a Tuesday night, feeding it real supply chain data from a client I used to work with. The system analyzed patterns, predicted disruptions, suggested solutions. It ran flawlessly for 6 hours. I sat back in my chair and cried. Not from sadness. From relief. From vindication. It worked. After everything, it actually worked. Tom came by the next morning. I showed him the results. He didn't say anything at first. He just watched the screen, nodding slowly. "This is revolutionary," he said finally. "I know. We need to test it in the real world." That afternoon I got an email from an old client, a small manufacturer I'd helped years ago. They were desperate. Tyler's team had promised them a new logistics solution, but it had failed spectacularly. Their inventory was a mess. Deliveries were late, and they were losing money. "Can you help?" they wrote. "We know you were let go, but we trust you more than we trust them." I smiled and typed my response. "I have something better. And it's free for your first month." The manufacturer was called Creston Industries. Small operation, 50 employees, family-owned for 3 generations. Tyler's system had promised them efficiency. Instead, it gave them chaos. I installed Lumalogics remotely and watched it work in real time. Within 48 hours, their delivery times improved by 30%. Within a week, their inventory accuracy hit 98%. The owner called me personally. "Marianne, this is incredible. How much do we owe you?" "Nothing yet. Just tell people if they ask." They told people. 5 other small businesses reached out within 2 weeks. Then 10 more. Then 20. Word spread quietly through industry networks, the kind of word of mouth that money can't buy. Tom met with me at the GarageTurned lab. He was excited but cautious. "This is growing faster than expected." "That's good. But if Tyler's company finds out it's you behind this, they'll try to bury you." "Then we stay quiet," I said. "We need to incorporate. Officially. Under a different name." I thought about it for a moment. Then I knew. North River Analytics. Why North River? Because I'm moving upstream. Away from them. Toward something better. North River Analytics became official on a Friday afternoon. Tom handled the paperwork while I hired 3 freelance developers. I trained them like family, teaching them not just the code but the philosophy behind it. Build for the user. Solve real problems. Don't chase trends. Demand kept growing. Couldn't keep up. We expanded to 6 developers, then 10. Small businesses across the state started using Lumalogics. Then businesses in other states. Then across the country. One of my developers, a young woman named Casey, forwarded me an internal company memo she'd found online. Someone had leaked it. It was from Tyler. He was pitching my old design to investors, claiming it as his own innovation. The presentation slides looked almost identical to what I'd shown that day in the conference room. I read it twice. Then I laughed. "What's funny?" Mask. He's stealing a system that doesn't work. The one I built for them was flawed. I fixed those flaws in Lumalogics. So he's presenting garbage. Exactly. Let him. Tom shook his head. You're scary when you're patient. I learned from the best. The people who fired me. I watched Tyler's presentation on a live stream. He stood on stage at a major industry conference, tie perfectly knotted, confidence radiating from every gesture. He talked about revolutionary predictive logistics and next-generation supply chain management. Every slide was stolen from my work. Every concept was something I'd developed. But the system he was describing, it didn't exist. Not in the way he claimed. I knew because I'd built the real version. And I knew its weaknesses. The parts that failed under pressure. The algorithms that broke with unexpected data. Tyler didn't know any of that. He just knew that because Casey had friends still working there. The message was clear. Find out who runs North River and shut them down. Tom called me that afternoon. We just got a meeting request. Tyler's assistant wants to discuss a partnership. Smiled. Accept it. But on our terms. Office. Our time. You sure about this? Completely. We scheduled it for the following Monday. I spent the weekend preparing. Not just documents and presentations. I prepared mentally. This was the moment I'd been working toward. The moment Tyler would finally understand. Monday morning arrived. Tom and I sat in our new conference room, the one we just leased downtown. Professional. Clean. A far cry from my garage lab. The door opened. Tyler walked in. Then he saw me. He froze. Tyler's face went through several emotions in rapid succession. Confusion. Recognition. Then something like fear. Mary Ann. His voice cracked slightly. Hello, Tyler. Please sit down. He sat slowly, eyes never leaving mine. Victoria joined via video conference, her face filling the large screen on the wall. Ms. Douglas, Victoria said coldly. I wasn't aware you were involved with North River. There's a lot you weren't aware of, I replied calmly. Tom opened his laptop and began the presentation. He showed North River's growth, our client retention rates, our success during the trucker strike. Every metric was impressive. Every chart pointed upward. Tyler sat in silence, hands folded on the table. So, Victoria said when Tom finished, you've built a competitor using knowledge from your time at our company. No, I said. I built a better product using my own intellectual property. Property I developed before I was fired for lack of innovation. The silence in the room was beautiful. What are you playing at, Ms. Douglas? Victoria's eyes narrowed on the screen. I reached into my folder and pulled out the patent documents. Clean. Official. Dated 6 months ago. I slid them across the table to Tyler. I'm not playing at anything. I'm showing you what real innovation looks like. Tyler picked up the documents with shaking hands. He read the first page, then the second. His face drained of color. These patents, he started, predate your filing by 2 months, I finished. And they're built on intellectual property I retained from the 2014 merger. Everything's legal. Everything's documented. Victoria leaned forward on the screen. We could fight this. You could try, Tom said. But you'd lose. We have 10 years of documentation proving Mary Ann's ownership. I let that sink in. Then I smiled. Oh, and Victoria. I should mention something else. What? I've already sold the exclusive license. Tyler's head snapped up. What? 3 days ago. To a global logistics firm. They're announcing it tomorrow. How much? Victoria's voice was barely controlled. I looked at Tom. He nodded. $1.6 billion. The silence that followed was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. Tyler stared at me like I was a ghost. Victoria's face on the screen went completely blank. That's impossible, Tyler whispered. Is it? You called my system useless. Dated. Commercially hopeless. Turns out the market disagreed. 3 days earlier, Tom and I had sat in a high-rise office overlooking the city. Across from us were 3 executives from Global Tech Solutions, one of the largest logistics companies in the world. They'd been tracking North River for months. "We want to buy the exclusive license," their CEO said. "Name your price." Tom and I had discussed this. We knew the value. We knew what we'd built. $1.6 billion, I said without hesitation. The CEO didn't blink. Done. We signed the papers that afternoon. The money would transfer within a week, pending legal review. But the deal was real, official, binding. Now, sitting across from Tyler, I watched him process it all. His company had fired me, called my work useless, and I just sold it for more money than their entire market cap. "We need to go," Victoria said abruptly. The screen went black. Tyler stood slowly. He looked at me with something between hatred and respect. "You planned this," he said. "No," I replied. "I just didn't give up. There's a difference." He walked out without another word. Tom and I sat in silence for a moment. Then we both started laughing. The news broke the next morning. Every major tech outlet ran the story. Fired engineers startup acquired for $1.6 billion. My phone exploded with calls and texts. Reporters showed up at my house. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years reached out to congratulate me. Tyler's company's stock dropped 12% in one day. The media loved the narrative. Veteran engineer fired for being too old builds billion-dollar company from her garage. David versus Goliath. The underdog wins. I gave a few interviews but stayed mostly quiet. I didn't need to gloat. The numbers spoke for themselves. Victoria called my lawyer directly, not me. She wanted to reconcile and explore partnership opportunities. My lawyer forwarded me the message with a note. "What do you want me to say?" I thought about it for exactly 5 seconds. Tell her I'm not interested. But thank her for the motivation. That afternoon I got a call from a producer at a national morning show. They wanted me to come on and tell my story. Live. Yes. Live. Millions of viewers. "Are you comfortable with that?" Smiled. "Absolutely." The interview was scheduled for the following week. The morning show set was bright and cheerful, designed to make guests feel comfortable. I sat across from the host, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a warm smile. "Marianne Douglas, welcome. Thank you for having me. Let's start at the beginning. You were fired after 25 years at your company. What was that like?" Took a breath. "Humiliating. Devastating. I thought my career was over. But it wasn't. No, it wasn't." I told the story carefully. Not with bitterness but with honesty. I talked about the garage lab, the sleepless nights, the moment Lumilogix finally worked. I talked about small businesses and real problems and building something that mattered. "What would you say to other people who've been fired or told they're too old?" the host asked. I looked directly at the camera. "Sometimes losing your job is the best promotion you'll ever get, because it forces you to bet on yourself. And that's the best bet you can make." The studio audience erupted in applause. The host had tears in her eyes. Somewhere I knew Tyler was watching. And that made the moment even sweeter. The fallout at Tyler's company was swift and brutal. Shareholders demanded answers. How did they let a billion-dollar opportunity walk out the door? Why was Tyler promoted after firing their most valuable developer? Internal emails leaked. Messages showing Victoria had personally approved my termination as part of a culture refresh initiative. Messages showing Tyler had pushed for aggressive layoffs to impress the new CEO. The board launched an internal investigation. Tyler was demoted within 2 weeks, stripped of his VP title and moved to a junior role with no direct reports. Victoria tried to weather the storm, but her reputation was destroyed. She resigned 3 months later. I watched it all unfold from a distance. I didn't celebrate their downfall. I didn't need to. I was too busy building something new. Tom and I established the North River Foundation, using part of our earnings to fund small business innovation grants. We hired 20 more developers. We opened offices in 3 cities. Then I received an invitation. The National Innovation Summit wanted me to keynote their annual conference. The same conference where Tyler had presented stolen work just months earlier. Will you do it? Mask. Absolutely. The summit was held in a massive convention center. 3,000 people in attendance. Tech leaders, investors, journalists, everyone who mattered in the industry. I stood backstage listening to my introduction. 25 years in tech. Fired at 58. Built a billion-dollar company from her garage. Sold it for $1.6 billion. The crowd applauded before I even walked out. I stepped onto the stage where Tyler had once stood, mocking my work. Thank you for that introduction, I began. A year ago, I was told I suffered from innovation fatigue. That I was too old, too stuck in my ways. That my ideas were commercially hopeless. I paused, letting that sink in. Today, I want to talk about what happens when you refuse to believe those lies. I spoke for 40 minutes. I talked about resilience, about betting on yourself, about the importance of building things that matter. I talked about age being an asset, not a liability. Experience being power, not weakness. When I finished, the crowd gave me a standing ovation. It lasted 3 full minutes. In the back of the auditorium, I saw a familiar figure slip out the side door. Taylor. He'd come to watch. And he'd left before I was done. That felt right somehow. Him leaving before the ending. Weeks passed. North River continued to grow. Lumalogics became the industry standard for small business logistics. We were profitable, expanding, making a real difference. Then one afternoon my assistant buzzed my office. Mary Ann. There's someone here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's important. Who is it? There was a pause. Tyler Grant. Almost said no. Almost told her to send him away. But curiosity won. Send him in. Tyler looked different. Thinner. Tired. His expensive suit was gone, replaced with khakis and a polo shirt. He stood in my doorway, hands in pockets, looking at the floor. Thank you for seeing me, he said quietly. You have 5 minutes. He sat down across from my desk. I came to say you won. Obviously. Completely. I was wrong about everything. Waited. Didn't speak. I need help, he continued. I can't find work. No one will hire me after everything. I was hoping you might know someone. Or have an opening. I looked at him for a long moment. Thought about everything he'd done. Everything he'd said. I'm not hiring right now, I said finally. He nodded slowly. I understand. He stood and walked to the door. Then he paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I didn't respond. He left and I never saw him again. That weekend I drove to my lake cabin. It was small, quiet, surrounded by pine trees and water. I'd bought it years ago as a retreat but rarely used it. Now, with everything finally settled, I allowed myself to go. I sat on the dock, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. For the first time in a year I felt truly at peace. Not because of the money. Not because of the recognition. Because I'd built something meaningful. Something that helped people. And I'd done it by refusing to give up on myself. My phone buzzed. Message from Tom. Forbes just called. They want to do a cover story. You interested? I smiled and typed back. Let's do it. The photo shoot was scheduled for the following week. The Forbes team set up in our main office, cameras and lights positioned perfectly. The photographer directed me, suggesting poses, checking lighting. This one, she said finally, snapping a photo as I smiled. This is the one. The magazine came out a month later. My face on the cover with the headline, How One Engineer Turned Rejection into a $1.6 billion Success. The article inside told the complete story. Tyler's betrayal. Victoria's arrogance. My late nights in the garage. The moment Lumalogics worked. The deal with Global Tech. All of it. But the interviewer's last question was the one that mattered most. What would you say to women over 50 who think it's too late to start over? I thought about my answer carefully. I'd say that age is not your enemy. Experience is your superpower. And the people who call your ideas useless, they're just afraid of what you might build without them. The article went viral. It was shared thousands of times on social media. I got messages from women and men around the world, thanking me, telling me their own stories of being dismissed and fighting back. That's when I realized something. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about everyone who'd ever been told they didn't matter, that they were too old, too slow, too stuck. I'd become a symbol, and that meant more than any amount of money. A year after my firing, I stood in front of a university auditorium filled with engineering students. Tom had arranged the speaking engagement. He thought I should share my story with the next generation. I talked about failure and resilience, about building things that matter, about the importance of owning your work legally and spiritually. After the talk, students lined up to ask questions. One young woman, maybe 22, raised her hand. Do you still think about Tyler? About what he did? Sometimes, I admitted. But not with anger. With gratitude. Gratitude. He forced me to build something better. On my own terms. Without him, I'd still be in that conference room, presenting to people who didn't value me. Instead, I'm here. Free. The students applauded. After they left, Tom and I walked across campus. You really don't hate him anymore, he asked. I don't have time to hate him. I'm too busy building the future. We stopped at a bench overlooking the quad. Students rushed past, backpacks heavy, futures uncertain. What's next? Mask smiled. Whatever we want. That's the point of winning. 2 years after everything began, I attended an awards ceremony for women in technology. I'd been selected to receive a Lifetime Achievement Award. The irony wasn't lost on me. 2 years ago I'd been fired. Now I was being celebrated. Backstage, waiting for my introduction, I thought about the journey. The humiliation, the anger, the late nights, the doubt. The moment it all clicked. They called my name. I walked out to applause. Stood at the podium. Looked at the faces in the crowd. When I was fired, I began. Someone called my work useless. Dated. Commercially hopeless. Paused smiling. That word, useless, became my fuel. Every time I wanted to quit, I heard it again. And it made me work harder. Not to prove them wrong. To prove myself right. I held up the award. This isn't just mine. This belongs to everyone who was told they were too old, too slow, too done. You're not. You're just getting started. The audience stood. The applause was deafening. Later outside, Tom handed me my phone. You should see this. It was a news article. Tyler Grant leaves tech industry permanently. I read it, then handed the phone back. Good for him. I hope he finds what he's looking for. Tom laughed. You really mean that? I do. Because I already found what I was looking for. What's that? I looked up at the sky, stars beginning to appear. Myself. The camera flashes from photographers captured that moment. Me standing tall, finally free. The woman they underestimated. The engineer they dismissed. The one who turned useless into $1.6 billion. And I smiled, knowing this was just the beginning.